Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Gooney Fanzine podcast. Today, I'm joined by Claudia. Freddie's on another one of his excursions or holidays, so just us two today. How are you, Claudia? You doing okay?
Yeah, good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, really good, thank you. It's been quite a somewhat quiet week in terms of Arsenal news, maybe, but obviously international break at the moment potentially came at a perfect time for Arsenal. Getting that break and getting that chance to go to their national team. So lots to run through in terms of that. I wanted to kind of run through the fixtures that we've had so far, in case anybody missed it and wanted to sort of see who's played and what kind of impact they've had. So I'm going to try and run through this as best as I can. Not sure I'm going to do as good of a job as Freddie, but I'll give it a good go. So obviously, first game we had on Friday, probably a late one over here. I know a lot of these you maybe wouldn't have been able to catch, and me neither, but. USA took on Iceland. That was a 3-1 win for them. Another good win for Emma Hayes, which pains me to say. But Emily Fox getting 66 minutes there, which is pretty good. I know there's been a lot of concerns about her fitness levels and kind of how many minutes she's played. So it seems Emma Hayes is aware of that as well and isn't spiting us in that sense and has given her a little bit of a rest. There was
Yeah.
actually lots of action from Arsenal players, which is really good to see, but also makes me wonder what they're doing in training for Arsenal because we've had Frida Maanum scoring. That was when Albania took on Norway. That was a 5-0 win for them. Nice to see Frida Maanum getting a goal. We've got Denmark with Katrin Kuhl. We haven't seen much of her this season for Arsenal, but she did get a goal in that game.
hmm
She was only on the pitch for 5 minutes when she scored that goal, so potentially something for future managers or Renee even to consider. Can she have an impact this season? That was a 5-0 win for them. We then had Zinsberger started again for Austria. That was a 3-0 win for them against Slovenia, obviously playing the full game there. If you talk about that Ireland game, a great win for them. 6-0 it was in the end against Georgia. And I think most of the conversation was about that Katie McCabe goal.
Yeah.
Very much Katie McCabe esque, I would say. What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah.
She scored a pen as well. So we'll come to that as well because I think that was obviously a good win for them and nice to see Katie McCabe on that score sheet.
Yeah, it was a bit of a trademark, wasn't it? Great goal. I'm sure we'll come on to it later, but Kyra scored a similar
Yeah.
goal as well. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Always nice to see the Arsenal girls getting on the score sheet because with the lack of goals that we've had this season, I think that is something that we've got to be considering. More goals did actually come. Stina Blackstenius, I think she had a couple ruled out for offside, but did get one in the 81st minute when Sweden took on Luxembourg. She
hmm
came off a minute after she scored the goal, maybe a bit harsh, but Kafaji also started. She played 66 minutes. That's good for her as well. Good for Kafaji to get minutes, don't you think? That
Yeah.
was a 4-0 win for Sweden. Obviously, I want to
Yeah.
touch on that quickly. Obviously, we've got two players there in Blackstenius and Kafaji who maybe
Mhm.
haven't started for Arsenal in recent games. Do you think
Mhm.
potentially either of those or both of those are going to be pushing into that starting 11 soon?
I think it would depend on the opposition. I think, as you saw when they came on, they're both sort of wild cards in a way. Like there aren't that many players like them,
Yeah.
and they really drive at defenses, especially Kafaji. She just she's a bit like a bulldozer, isn't she? So
Yeah.
I think when we're trying to play more like tiki-taka football, I think we'll maybe not play them as much, but and yeah, like plays towards goal rather than sort of away from goal, like a bit more like Russo. Yeah, it depends on the opposition, but yeah, like you said, it's just good to see them getting minutes because they haven't had well, especially Kafaji, she hasn't had that many minutes this season. So I think they are trying to ease her in because of the season. This is what I've heard in Sweden. So yeah, like they don't want to play her too much too soon because she's got to last till May. So, and she's just come off the back of another season. She hasn't really had a break. So yeah, but I think yeah, it's going to be good to see them hopefully get more minutes going forward. Um, and we'll talk about it later, but yeah, we'll talk about the United game coming up and whether we think they'll play in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's minute management at its finest. Obviously, you've got a new manager coming in who's got to figure out kind of what. Obviously, we talked a little bit about this last week in terms of Renee Slagers has obviously played a lot of football with, alongside Jonas Eidevall, and potentially a lot of the football that she's playing is very similar because that's
Mm.
what these girls know. And it's about actually, like she said, it's about those tiny margins. It's about those key players that we might be able to use. And there is always that concern when you bring someone like Kafaji or Blackstenius into the starting 11, you don't have them then to bring off the bench if you need somebody. And getting that those decisions right is huge. And obviously players like Russo, which we'll obviously come on to when we talk about the England game, is that's also huge because you want to trust her, you want to give her time, and you want to see, what she can do. But at what point do you think, okay, this person's not having as much of an impact in the starting 11 as we would have liked? And
Mm.
yeah, we will talk a bit more about that when we talk about the United game, but a couple more exciting games have happened. Switzerland, Australia, that was a really tight one. That finished 1-1. A lot of players there. Obviously, Leah Volti back in that starting 11. Cooney-Cross and Ford both started that game. Steph Catley actually started that one from the bench. And it was a Caitlin Ford penalty that allowed Australia to take the lead, but Switzerland did get that goal back. And Catley did come on as a substitution. And then we go to the big one that happened at Wembley, England taking on Germany, a repeat of that infamous Euros final. And they did not disappoint in terms of friendly excitement. 4-3 it finished in the end. I was there and I was blown away that that was happening. England 3-0 down at Wembley. That was not a performance that you want to see against a team like Germany. I thought Germany played extremely well. Obviously, it was quite a haul of Arsenal players in that starting 11. We saw Russo, Mead, and Williamson start. Are you surprised by the selection from Serena in terms of starting those players or the players that she did start, especially those Arsenal players?
Um, no, uh, I think Russo was England Player of the Year,
Yeah.
and I think Leah Williamson is the captain. So no, but Beth Mead, I mean, there is a bit more maybe competition for her, I would say. But her GA is just ridiculous, like even when she's not playing well. So again, like you can't really leave her out. And I know it's just a friendly, but she's obviously trying to have a strong lineup against Germany because we've got South Africa coming up, and not that that's necessarily going to be easy, but potentially easier than Germany. So she's obviously trying to rotate, and she's already said that there will be rotation. So I don't think, we don't really need to think in terms of like first 11s, but yeah, I think they were all going to get plenty of minutes anyway. So I wasn't surprised to see them in the starting lineup. No, and we know that she doesn't. Well, that is basically the trusted team from the Euros and stuff. So yeah, well, maybe not Alessia, but in recent times, Alessia's been the starting number 9. So yeah, no, not really.
No, no surprises there, and she went with a very strong lineup as well. I don't think many fans would have been too disappointed with that starting lineup. Maybe potentially, it was Hannah Hampton that started in goal, but we don't need to get too much into the other players that played. Leah actually played 60, just over 60 minutes until she came off, and Alex Greenwood came on. Potentially, maybe that could be on Serena's mind in terms of that back line, and kind of she did change a couple of things up there. Russo played 73 minutes until she came off. I think Chloe Kelly came on at that point. And then we saw Beth Mead come off just past the 80th minute. So they actually did finish the game with no Arsenal players on the pitch. Potentially that's a case of trying to switch up the style of play that they were playing, or maybe just a case of fitness, or it's a very tactical game against Germany. Lots of women were actually not in the match day squad. That was a concussion protocol, we were told. I haven't actually double checked the team news for England's upcoming game against South Africa, but it will be interesting to see who Serena trusts in that game. I wanted to ask about performance-wise, kind of what you thought about those three players. Obviously, there was a little bit, as always with England, a lot of criticism for certain players on social media. People speaking out about poor performances. If we just pick
Mhm.
out those three Arsenal players that actually played, what were
Yeah.
your thoughts on their performances? And maybe do you think they will play again against South Africa, or what are your thoughts on that really?
Um, I think if they don't, it wouldn't necessarily be performance related. I think Leah had a difficult game. I don't think she's fully fit, to be honest. again, we've had, ACLs. They kind of have ruined uh, Arsenal's sort of rhythm, and obviously that then stretches over to England as well. I think Beth was pretty good. I think she gave the ball away a few times, but her defensive work is always really good. She always gives everything, and she got an assist, I think, didn't she?
Yeah,
For Ruth, was it? No,
the
for
touchdown way
Stanway.
goal.
Yeah. And I think Russo was involved in that move as well. It was probably the best move that England did all game. And I thought that, yeah, they were involved in everything positive, basically, that England were doing in the final third. So yeah, I think it was a decent performance from all of them, really. I mean, I think Leah did struggle, but it's kind of understandable. I mean, she hasn't really played that much this season. I mean, especially for England, like, yeah, I just think she needs to get a bit more rhythm, and maybe a bit more confidence, because I think obviously everything that's been going on at Arsenal maybe has affected her confidence. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Say you can probably apply that to the other players as well in terms of that Arsenal. They've had such a tough time off the pitch and on the pitch in terms of just before the recent games that we've seen, and obviously that will have an impact on them. And it'd be interesting to see how that rotation is done. Like you say, you don't want to underestimate that South Africa team, but you do think potentially it's a different test for England, but potentially an easier one compared to Germany. So potentially the rotation is coming from one, obviously with the fitness levels and maintaining those minutes and making sure nobody plays too much in this international break, but also in terms of, just trying different players out. I mean, we've seen Serena's tried to do that. Maybe potentially opportunity for other players who don't get those minutes to play. But not too much really to report on that. Interesting to see if Moy is included back in the squad. We will keep an eye on that as well. And in terms of the other fixtures, just to run you guys through that, the Netherlands played Indonesia. That was a 15-0 game. Didn't hear too much about that one, but Daphne van Domselaar did not play that one. She was on the bench, and it was Leicester City's Cop that started in goal there. Then Spain took on Canada. That was a 1-1. Both Cadena and Caldente playing 90 minutes. But Caldente, sorry, has now obviously come out of international duty. She's not there at the moment due to personal reasons. I think that's a family issue. So we obviously hope everything is okay there. And I don't think I think she'll probably be returning back. We saw her actually at the Ballon d'Or ceremony yesterday, eighth in the Ballon d'Or. We've got to touch on that very quickly, actually, while we're on that. Obviously, a fantastic player, started the season extremely well, potentially a contender for one of the players of the season for Arsenal. Do you think that is something you would agree with there in terms of the way she started the season, especially in such tough times for Arsenal?
Yeah, definitely. I think she hasn't quite um sort of nailed down a position yet, but I think, and also like it's going to take time to, because she's playing with different players. We've had a lot of rotation, maybe slightly more than we would like, but I think whenever she has played, she's looked good. I think she's probably technically our best player. And so, yeah, I think every time she plays, just because of her individual quality, she's always going to make the team better. Yeah, so I think obviously the rest of this is a long season, so we'll see. But I think she's definitely been one of our best players so far. Yeah.
Absolutely, and coming into a new league as well and being able to do that under the circumstances is huge, and you can't downplay that. And always great to see an Arsenal player at the Ballon d'Or ceremony and getting that eighth. I think well deserved. Obviously, she had a fantastic season last year at Barcelona, and then obviously we talk about last summer with the World Cup and everything. So it's been a great start to the season for her. Just a few more fixtures that we had. The USA taking on Iceland. It was about 46 minutes for Emily Fox. They got a 3-1 win. Nice to see her getting some minutes, but obviously still being managed. She has played an awful lot this season. It seems like she's in every single squad that we've played, or every single match day squad that we've played, even in that starting 11. A really exciting game against between Germany and Australia. That was, like you mentioned, we'll touch on that. Kyra Cooney-Cross, 50th appearance for the Matildas, and the second fastest player to do that. And she marked that with a performance and a goal. What were
Yeah.
your thoughts on that? I know a lot, it's been circulating social media. Fantastic goal, of course.
Yeah.
But in terms of that, I just want to obviously say all three, Catley, Kyra Cooney-Cross and Caitlin Ford did play the 90 minutes in that game. Good minutes for them and a good performance from Kyra. Lots to take from that one as well.
Yeah, it's her first goal for the Matildas, so that's amazing. And she usually plays as a six, I think. So she was saying, I think they asked her um, sort of, talk us through the goal type thing.
Yeah,
And she said, like, usually I'm a bit further back, so I don't get to shoot. Whereas this time she was a bit further forward. She saw that the keeper was off her line, didn't let the ball run to her teammate, but instead just lashed it. And
yeah,
it managed to loop up and over. I don't know how you do that, to be honest. I've never scored a goal like that.
me
I don't
neither.
know if you.
No, definitely not.
But yeah, no, it was great. And she's she's played really well this season, so it's good to see her carrying that form over to the Matildas as well. Yeah.
Do you think there's a potential then more minutes for Kyra Cooney-Cross at Arsenal? Obviously, this is a huge topic of conversation that Arsenal midfield potentially looking a bit lackluster at times, and I think that's not a case of quality. We know both Leah Volti and Kim Little have the quality, and they have the fitness. But do you think potentially too many minutes played for those two, and it's showing? And you've got somebody like Kyra Cooney-Cross on the bench. Is this something that Arsenal should be looking at to play her more and potentially what that best role for her could be?
Yeah, definitely. But I also think we need to figure out who's going to play the number 10 as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, uh I think she's younger, she's got more energy. She's sort of just that slight burst of maybe of pace or to get away from the opposition. Like you said, that the others are both great players. Kim and Leah are brilliant, but they're just slightly different. Kyra's maybe a bit stronger going forward than Leah Volti. I think Leah actually said that herself. So, but we've talked about, defensively, Kyra. Um, I think it's going to take time to learn the system and how we play and stuff and where she needs to be. But you can see that there's so much talent there. Like, when she gets the ball, she's always looking to make. She doesn't choose the easy pass usually,
Yeah.
actually, and maybe that is something that we need. But I also think we need more creativity even further up the pitch. So, yes, in answer to your question, I think it would be great to see her get more minutes. Definitely, I
Yeah.
think she will because I'm sure one of the other two will get injured at some point because it's just. I think that's just part of football now, really. Like, especially at that age, it's rare probably to go through a whole season without getting any injuries at all. And it's great to know that we've got a good option there if that does happen. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's also trying to be preventative of those injuries and potentially, it can impact a player like Kim Little. There's no discredit to her in the absolute slightest, but she, doesn't need to be playing those 90 minutes. It's potentially those substitutions in game as well that are huge to how Arsenal's season is going to go. We know there's going to be hopefully a lot of fixtures, especially if we progress through competitions and even in the league as well. It's getting tougher to maintain fitness across the squad, and I think rotation is going to be huge. And what we're absolutely praying for, as I read out these fixtures that we've still got to play, is that there's no big injuries or no injuries at all for those Arsenal players. I think there's a fear, isn't there, in women's football? You sort of hold your breath when a player goes down at the moment. Obviously, we saw that unfortunately happening with Palova when she was on international duty, and then obviously unfortunately did her ACL. So a big one is rotation. I know international managers will be considering that as well. So in terms of the fixtures that we've got coming up, Austria with Zinsberg are probably likely to start in that. Play that 90 minutes. They're playing Slovenia. You've got Denmark coming up against the Netherlands. Interesting to see if Van Domselaar gets any minutes in that game as well. And obviously Cole playing there for Denmark. Italy against Spain. Spain with Cadena potentially playing again, but no Mariona Caldente in that fixture. Norway with obviously Frida Maanum coming up against Albania. We've got Sweden with Blackstenius and Kafaji. They're playing Luxembourg. Ireland coming up against Georgia again. Katie McCabe, obviously our only player in that Ireland squad. Interesting to see if they can get another victory. That could be huge for them. You've got Switzerland with Leah Volti coming up against France. That could be a really tough fixture for them, and I'm interested to see how they're preparing for obviously hosting the Euros as well next year. And then of course England taking on a different kind of opponent to usual in South Africa. Obviously you've got the four Arsenal players there. We're not too 100% sure on Lotte Wubben-Moy's fitness yet. But obviously there could be the potential for four Arsenal players to feature there. Obviously Russo, Mead, and Williamson as well. And then finishing off, because she can't play enough minutes this season, Emily Fox, another game for her against Argentina. So lots of fixtures to look forward to. And I can't not touch on another important fixture that's coming up on Thursday as well. The under-17 Lionesses are up against Spain in a big semi-final. I hate to say that it's against Spain because we've had this happen so many times. They seem to be the one that always catches us up and somehow finds that result. So it's a very difficult fixture for them. But they've just come off the bat of beating Japan 4-1 on penalties. Layla Harbour started that game and she's played quite a lot of minutes, I think, across this tournament. We also have Isabel Fisher on the bench, and Sophie Harwood was also on the bench. She's one of our recent signings to the academy, a very big talent that we beat a lot of teams to her signature. And what Layla Harbour did actually score one of the penalties. So a good performance for our young gunners as well. If you want to watch that, it's actually on Thursday. So Halloween night for you if you want to stay up. 11 p.m. UK time kickoff because it's actually being held, the tournament's being held in the Dominican Republic. So they're quite late kickoffs. But I'm sure that you can probably catch the highlights as well. So fingers crossed for our young players there and also just for the Lionesses in general to get that victory against a really tough opponent in Spain and hopefully go on and progress. Little to say about that really in terms of the players that are in that squad. They're quite young players, potentially great prospects for Arsenal, but likely to not have too many minutes this season, and a lot I think are out on loan as well. So what I did want to come to is Arsenal's fixtures that are coming up. So I'll run you through the next five fixtures, and we can try not to be too scared about this. Man United away, obviously happening on Sunday. We've then got a very tough, what we wouldn't you maybe wouldn't expect to be, but I think is a tough home fixture against Brighton. Then Juventus away, Tottenham away against familiar rivals, and then Juventus at home. Now, if you were to hear that, potentially that could be a very, very tough run. And I also want to touch on the fact that Renee Slager is still in charge of Arsenal at this moment in time. But it seems like Arsenal are considering potential replacements. I want to start by talking about Man United away this weekend. A very tough fixture for Arsenal. I want to ask, what are you expecting from that game in terms of performances? Do you think Arsenal can get the victory? And also, maybe who do you think we might turn to in terms of starting 11 or maybe even impact subs in that game? And yeah, lots of talk about in terms of a very tough fixture and away as well, which we know last season we got a draw there, which maybe could have won if we hadn't made so many mistakes. What are
Mm.
your thoughts on that game?
I think we can hurt them defensively, but I think uh, they've got some threat going forward now, more than they did before, with Elizabeth Talon and Grace Clinton. So yeah, I think it's going to be a tough game, like you said. At home, they're pretty good. Um, well, this season I think they've only dropped points once, and that was a draw against Brighton, right? So yeah, I mean they're in form, I guess. But I also think we're going to be a big test for them as well. Um, I think in terms of who's going to play, like that's quite difficult for me to predict, especially with we don't know too much about Renee. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, yes, she's worked under Jonas, but obviously she's now choosing the starting 11, and I'm sure a lot of things will be similar, especially in terms of the way that we play. That like not it's not going to change overnight, but um, from what I remember last season, Stina started, didn't she?
Yeah.
And she scored, right?
She
So
scored, yeah. She scored the first goal of that game, yeah. And it was an
yeah,
interesting one because it was Russo's return to Man United since leaving, and she didn't start that game. She did come on and hit the crossbar at one point. But yeah, that maybe we could touch on that as well. Obviously, Russo yet to score, I think, against Manchester United since leaving. Was actually booed last time she went to Lee Sports Village. Potentially United fans might have have got over that now. We'll wait to see what happens. Do you think potentially she should start that game? We discussed that last. I'm sure we discussed that last season as well. The impact that she might have playing against that United side, and she showed that off the bench. Is this time to trust in Russo to start or switch things up? And if you were if you were Renee Slagers, would you go with Russo and back her? Hopefully, no injuries that we're going to have since until that point, but. Everybody fully fit, would you start Russo or would you turn to a different sitter and start Stina Blackstenius?
I think I would start Russo, but only because I think she hasn't been able to play much against them.
Yeah.
She, like we said, she started on the bench, and at the Emirates, she started on the bench as well. So
Yeah.
I think it's good to give her a chance, and also like bringing on Stina from the bench is always, well, most of the time has an impact. So, and there are some games where because we're not playing well as a collective, like Stina can't get into it even when she comes on. But
Yeah.
if we are playing well, then bring her on. Yeah, she's going to cause damage, I think. So, yeah, I'd like to see Rizzo start. I think she needs confidence, she needs minutes, and I also just think in general that this is another conversation. But I've heard people say that like it's good to have a sort of regular number nine, because it's a confidence position, like being in goal. So yeah, having two world class, well, having two really good number nines that we have, um, it kind of just it makes it almost we've got too many options, and we're not getting the best out of either of them. So yeah, that's another conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots to talk about, and we could probably go all day. But I do want to ask you about those fixtures that are coming up, bar that Man United one. Obviously, Brighton at the Emirates, and then Juventus home and away, and in the middle of that, a North London derby. Which one of those what in terms of those fixtures, what kind of stands out to you? I mean, they're all tough tests, but just thinking about those coming up, and obviously the form that Arsenal are in, the situation with the manager. What do you expect from this run of games? And hypothetically, we're not sure really, are we, if Rene is going to be in charge for them all, if someone else is going to come in. But either way, I think Arsenal are in a situation where they need points and they need to win every single game. But which of those maybe stands out to you, and what are you expecting from those other four fixtures that we've got coming up?
Yeah, yeah, like you said, they're all difficult. I think we can beat Spurs. I really do. Away. I know we didn't last season, but we were pretty much on top for like 99% of the game from what I heard. I don't think I managed to catch that one, but that was like one of the only games I didn't watch last season.
Yeah.
But and I'm glad I didn't. But yeah, I think this time I do think we can do it. Juventus are a bit more of like an unknown for me. I know the WSL better than the Champions League, but um, I mean, I think any Champions League team will be pretty decent. So it's not, yeah, like I said, it's not going to be an easy game. But I think we have the quality in our team that, like the individual quality, even if we're not clicking as a collective, which is understandable given we've got a new manager, and like I think it's just not clicking in general at the moment, because we haven't really found those connections, and I think we have enough individual quality that we should still hopefully be winning these games. Yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, for me, I think Brighton is a tough test. That's the one that maybe stands out in terms of I think teams like that do tend to hurt Arsenal, don't they? It's
Yeah.
we are at home, so we have that advantage. But I think for me, I'm excited to see how we fare in that game. I think obviously Brighton the only team to really test Man United in terms of getting that draw, which is actually a huge result. And I think Brighton would happily take a draw against Arsenal, even a victory if they could. For me, the derby is huge because I think that always sets the tone, doesn't it, for how the season's going to go. I think if you go and beat Tottenham away, maybe that people used to say that was an easy sort of game, but recently that hasn't been, has it? And it's been one of those that have maybe, we've looked back at and thought that kind of cost us our position in the league and even the title if you want to go back that far. But Yeah, Champions League is huge, and Freddie and I talked about that in terms of those Juventus games kind of make or break the group for Arsenal if they can get victories in those. At least one, especially that away one coming up soon. That could be a huge 3 points in seeing Arsenal out of that group into the next stage. So it's definitely going to be tough. And it kind of that kind of leads into the point that I want to finish with in terms of what is probably on every Arsenal fan's mind in terms of the manager. Arsenal obviously have Renee Slager as interim manager at the moment. It doesn't seem to be her that is, really the candidate for Arsenal. She seems to just be an interim. She obviously couldn't prove herself potentially, but it doesn't seem like she's considering that either. The name that's coming up a lot, that seems to be a clear favourite is obviously Nick Cushing, who we will know from his time at Manchester City. And he's over, I want to say in the NWSL now. I don't follow it too well, but he's having sort of a good season and he's tied down to a contract with a Red Bull team until 2025. But obviously, he won trophies at Manchester City, and
Mhm.
Arsenal clearly have a reason for choosing him as a favourite.
Mhm.
Obviously, it's hard to kind of know what the reasons are why Arsenal are going for a particular type of manager. But for you, if you're looking at Arsenal in recent times, what is it for you that Arsenal should be looking for in a manager going forward? What are those key sort of qualities that Arsenal might be looking for? And is there a standout for you in terms of what kind of manager you would have brought in that situation?
I think on the player side of things, like the culture side of things, and sort of just getting the players sort of into the habits that they need to be a
Yeah,
really like a winning side. I think Casey would be really good because she knows she's played for Arsenal, she knows what it means, and she's had a successful career. She's played for England, and yeah, I think she knows quite a lot of the players. She's played with Leah Williamson, um, and yeah, I think the players would really respect her. In terms of the style of play, I don't know because I haven't watched the NWSL much. And but yeah, I think Casey Sonia would be a great candidate. With Nick Cushing, I think he's managing in men's football at the moment, so it's hard to really
yeah,
to say uh like how he's doing because it's with the NWSL you can sort of say like, oh, he's we can see the players, you know what I mean? Whereas like
yeah,
for could we see them at international level or whatever, but we have no idea. Like I think yeah, the New York Red Bulls or something like that he's managing at the moment.
yeah,
But yeah, like he's won, like you said, he's won the WSL with City, so maybe that is the reason that they want him. But I don't think there's a standout candidate. I don't know about you, but I don't look at one candidate and think they have everything. They're going to step in straight away, like because, for example, Emma Hayes, like she's got a track record of winning multiple leagues in a row. She was an assistant at Arsenal. She knows the league inside out. Someone like that, like you just want straight away. But yeah, we don't really there isn't really anyone like that. So yeah, but those two are the two names that are kind of the standout ones. Apparently, we're not considering Casey Stoney at the moment, but I wouldn't be surprised if that changes, to be honest. Especially
yeah.
if Nick Cushing does turn it down, because that is what's being reported that he's going to turn it down. So yeah,
Yeah, who knows? Honestly, this is one of those situations where you cannot predict what Arsenal are thinking, what they're going to do. It did obviously come out that he was the favourite, and it's the MLS that he's managing in. That's how bad my American football is.
yeah,
We don't know anything about US football, but yeah, obviously has been in the WSL as well. So there's some experience there, but obviously, like you say, moving over to a different, what you would basically say is a different sport completely with men's
yeah,
football. It's interesting to see how he would fare. Katie Stoney, obviously, positives and negatives of that one. Obviously, I think she had a very good managerial career in terms of what she did with the resources that she had, promoting
Yeah.
that championship Manchester United side and then doing quite well in her first two seasons in the NWSL, but then third not so good that really saw her lose her position. But I think it came as a shock to many at the time that she'd lost that position that she had in the NWSL because she'd done extremely well and then kind of slightly fallen off, and it seemed like they lost faith in her quite quickly. But one of the criticisms of that, obviously, that she didn't score enough goals with the teams that she had. So potentially, maybe that's why Arsenal, you can't predict it, but maybe that's why Arsenal are looking to maybe someone who has the track record of winning big games and scoring and playing somewhat attacking football. But like you say, yeah, I mean the true contenders in terms of top managers at the moment are already in positions. Chelsea did an extremely good job of getting Sonia Bonpastor to come from Lyon to Chelsea, and then obviously Emma Hayes going to the US. So yeah, it is a tough call to make. And obviously Renee Slagers is she maybe has the potential, but maybe too much of her time has been spent under Jonas, and that might have impacted maybe her potential to take that job permanently. But like I say, so much to talk about. And I actually said at the start that there wasn't too much going on, but clearly there is in the world of Arsenal always. But thank you so much for coming on, and it's always great to have you on here and chat with you. And yeah, we'll kind of see where we're at in terms of in terms of Arsenal this time next week. Obviously, after they've taken on a difficult opponent in Manchester United, and we've had the final fixtures of international break. So lots to talk about probably going forward, and we'll see how it fares in terms of who gets appointed as manager of Arsenal when that actually happens. So always great to have you, and thank you for coming on and doing this episode with me.
Thanks for having me.